What's happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the first 3 episodes of Season 5 of The Expanse, which drops next week on December 16th. Not to worry, this video is going to be completely 100% spoiler-free because it has to be. My access to the press screener for the show specifically forbids any spoilers of any kind until December 16th. But what's not a spoiler is that Season 5 is an adaptation of Book 5 in the series Nemesis Games, my personal favorite of the 8 books published so far, which you can see over my right shoulder right here. But just so you don't have to wait for my initial thoughts, the first 3 episodes absolutely nailed the story so far with an incredibly faithful adaptation of the source material, a story where our heroes are scattered into their own separate missions all across the solar system, and each of these individual stories ties directly into this massive story that's going to completely change the status quo of this fictional setting moving forward. Episode 3 ends with this incredible apocalyptic cliffhanger, and if you've read Nemesis Games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But long story short, so far the season's on track to potentially be the best season yet, and I'm very fired up for what's to come. But now that you know how much I'm enjoying this season so far, let me pause for a second and discuss my various options for how I can review this season. I have access right now to the first 9 of the 10 episodes through my press screener, which has left me a little bit torn over how to review them. Amazon's plan is to release the first 3 episodes next week, followed by 1 episode per week, starting with episode 4, which is how most people are going to be watching and discussing the show. And I consider just watching everything up front and doing a big, giant, spoiler-free review of the entire season. And I suspect that's how most websites are going to cover the show. But I'm thinking the better approach is to do a new video each week as new content becomes available. The trick's going to be trying to review episodes without giving away anything that comes later in the season. Amazon's made it abundantly clear that revealing spoilers ahead of individual episodes will not be tolerated, and they emailed us a list of all the various dates where various spoilers are allowed to be unveiled. Now, people who follow the books might rightfully point out that any and all major spoilers are already out there on the internet for anyone who cares to look, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that Amazon is now planning on wrapping up the show completely at the end of season 6, and there's evidence that the writers are going to start pulling plot lines and characters from the later books, so the spoilers from this season could, in theory, reveal more than just the events that took place in Nemesis Games. I know some people are already starting petitions to save the show again, like after season 3 when it was first canceled, but this time around the situation, it's a lot more complicated for several reasons. The first reason is that the show is likely abandoning its format of devoting roughly 1 season per book, which it's been doing up till now. I saw some interviews where the showrunners have expressed an interest in giving the whole show a very satisfactory conclusion by the end of season 6. So if the show were sticking with the earlier strategy of roughly 1 season per book and season 6 ended at the end of Babylon's Ashes, I'd be all over trying to get behind any sort of online crusade to find the show another home to adapt the remaining 3 books. The final book is due in 2021, and I'm fired up to read it. But the big question is, to what degree will the writers of the show try and adapt all the remaining books in the final season? My suspicion is that season 6 is going to offer some sort of hybrid ending or compromise, pulling ingredients and plot lines from later books, but not doing the deep dive into the seismic changes that took place in books 7, 8, and 9, a storyline that jumps ahead 30 years in the Expanse timeline. Now, I have to be really careful not to spoil massive events that may or may not be coming in this show, because it all depends upon how much material from these later books are going to be included in this season and the next. Because if the show does try and wrap up the entire saga with something resembling a satisfactory conclusion that incorporates elements from all the later books, the reality is that the show will not be able to continue no matter what, because at that point the showrunners will have officially run out of material to adapt. They will have, in essence, run out of runway. But another reason wrapping up the show has become so complicated is the fact that Alcon Entertainment has let go of actor Cass Anvar, who plays Alex. He will not be returning in season 6 due to a series of sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations that came to light after the filming of season 5 was already finished. According to what I've read, Alcon Entertainment hired a third-party investigator to look into these allegations, and while I have no personal way of knowing what the final legal consequences will be for Cass Anvar, Alcon decided it was best to move on without him until that situation gets resolved. Now, the character of Alex has always been one of my favorites in the series, so it's going to be really tricky to discuss any scenes involving his character without discussing these accusations each and every single time, especially since we might be receiving new news about the allegations periodically throughout season 5 up through the season finale on February 3rd. And I really don't know what's the right approach to discussing that character, but for now I think the best course forward is just to try and discuss the character of Alex as objectively as possible in the context of the show. But I've been talking for way too long at this point without actually reviewing anything, so let's put aside all that crap for now and try and focus on the story itself. I'll do my best to tap dance around any spoilers, but anything that was revealed in the trailer, I'm going to consider fair game no matter what precautions Amazon is urging us to take in our reviews. In broad strokes, this season's all about Marco Inaros and his grand scheme to cause complete and total havoc across the solar system in an effort to grab as much power as humanly possible for both Belters as well as his free navy. And this conflict explodes at a time when the greatest mass exodus in human history is underway, with ships constantly traveling through the Ring Gate in search of new worlds to colonize. Much like in Empire Strikes Back, this story scatters our central characters into different storylines, all of which force them either to deal with the consequences of Marco's actions or with Marco himself, who's part of an even larger conspiracy that I will say nothing more about until we get deeper into the season. So far, I've only watched the first 3 episodes, but my willpower is rapidly crumbling. I'm probably going to watch a few more this evening. At any rate, as you likely saw in the trailer, the first 3 episodes deal with 4 major storylines following all of our central characters from the Rocinante. We've got Amos returning to his home in Baltimore in order to tie up some loose ends. We have Alex returning to Mars, where he's reunited with Bobby, who's investigating this vast conspiracy for Avasarala. Holden sticks around on the Tycho station working with Fred Johnson, who's fighting the good fight for Belter autonomy, but most importantly, the season follows Naomi's hunt for her son Philip, who she abandoned years ago, and as a result, Philip now looks up to his father Marco Inaros as a hero, and he believes in each and every single item on Marco's mad agenda. And as a massive fan of Nemesis games, I have to say that in spite of some modifications to both condense and streamline the story, so far there hasn't been a single false note or a single moment that gives me any cause for alarm. It looks as if Nemesis games is being adapted with as much integrity and passion as humanly possible, given the budgetary constraints of the show. I mean, these books, if you tried to adapt them all the way, it never would have been remotely economically feasible to even attempt it. But I think the showrunners are doing a damn good job across the board, and I think the main reason I'm having so much fun is that Season 5 makes this show feel like it's back on track. I always knew that Season 4 was going to be a tougher sell, just because Book 4, Cibola Burn, is my least favorite of the 8 books so far. And don't get me wrong, I thought Season 4 was very enjoyable and said as much in my review, but this season's shaping up to be this grand sci-fi war-torn saga. It's going to make diehard fans of the show feel incredibly vindicated and rewarded for their loyalty to the show over all these years. If there's a central theme to this season, it's one that's perfectly articulated by Fred Johnson, and the idea is that just because someone's an underdog doesn't necessarily make them a good guy. The delicate balance between Earth, Mars, and the Belt has always been strained even under the best of circumstances, but with so much manpower, brainpower, and with so many resources leaving the solar system for good, this delicate balance has come completely unraveled, creating enormous opportunities for anyone wishing to make a power grab either in this solar system or abroad. And because this is the Expanse, that means a lot of people are going to die in all sorts of horrible ways. And what I like about the premise for this season is that it's less about the threat of the proto-molecule, the builders, and who might have killed them a long time ago, and it's much more about the threat that human beings will always pose to each other. That said, the show gives us one major scene early on that reveals that the much larger and much more ancient threat has not been forgotten by the showrunners. And it was this scene that clued me into the fact that Season 5 is looking beyond Nemesis games in terms of major revelations about the overall plot. So because I've been effectively gagged on discussing any potential spoilers by Amazon, I'll simply say that Amos continues to be my favorite character. Wes Chatham, he's completely totally made this role his own, and he just keeps getting better. He just walks and talks with so much confidence now. And I hope once this show wraps up after Season 6, that Wes Chatham sees his career opening up with all these new possibilities. But what I think I love most is how this fictional setting, it's not stagnant. All 3 of the major civilizations, they continue to evolve with massive changes to their societies, some good, some bad, but all these little details really make it feel like a world that lives and breathes. And for 5 years now on this show, these characters have been a part of our lives, and we're still learning so much about what makes our heroes tick. Now, I'm dying to discuss the villains of this season and what actions they've taken so far, but for now, all that needs to wait. But I think my excitement to discuss these details only will give me more reason to keep coming back and doing weekly videos once the show gets underway next week. And if I can find a fellow fanatic who wants to talk about the show, it might even be fun to try doing some live streams on the days that the new episodes drop. But I think that's all I have to say for now. I think the season's off to an incredible start, and I look forward to discussing the show in greater detail in the weeks to come. So I can't thank you enough for watching the video. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff. But I can't thank you enough for watching. Greatly appreciate it, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.